On a stormy Lagos night, a barefoot maid stepped into a billionaire's mansion for her first day of work. But by the end of that week, she would uncover a locked door no one dared to open, a door that had been untouched for 10 years. Behind it, a room frozen in time, and a truth so devastating it made the cold-hearted billionaire collapse to the floor. But this isn't just a story about wealth or secrets. It's about a daughter who didn't know her name, a woman erased by love, and a house where grief lived in silence. And it all started with a sound that only the maid could hear. The wind screamed across the Lekki coastline as lightning clawed through the sky. Rain battered the windshield of the dusty cab as it wound its way through the wealthy enclave, until it stopped at a steel gate guarded by silence. The name etched into the marble column read simply, Odogwu Estate. Eniola stepped out of the car barefoot, her slippers long lost in the flood-swollen streets. Her wrapper clung to her skin, soaked to the bone. She clutched her small duffel bag tightly, its contents no more than a spare dress, a worn-out Bible, and a notebook filled with quiet dreams. The gates opened with a mechanical hiss, not by human hands, but by an unseen system. She walked past a garden too perfect for nature, its symmetry undisturbed even by the storm. The mansion emerged ahead like a glass ghost in the rain, towering, angular, cold. Every inch of it was smart, automated, and too quiet. A figure was waiting for her inside, the head steward, Madame Zeno. Dressed in gray and white, she spoke with clipped words and a gaze that didn't blink. "You're late," she said, though Eniola had arrived early. "Follow me." No welcome, no warmth. Just marble floors, silent corridors, and lights that flickered on before they arrived and off when they passed. The air was cool and sterile, carrying the faint scent of electric roses, synthetic and manufactured. Obina Odogwu, the man who owned all this silence, was nowhere to be seen. He was a legend Eniola only knew through headlines and myths. Once the golden boy of Lagos tech, the billionaire who built solar towers and funded water purification systems, then vanished from public view 10 years ago, the same year his wedding was called off, and his fiancée was never seen again. Why did he need a maid now? Eniola had asked the strange recruiter who found her in Akiti. He never answered, just handed her an offer letter and a one-way ticket. As they walked deeper into the mansion, Eniola noticed something strange. A wooden door, old, heavy, unpainted, completely out of place among the sleek, biometric doors that opened with fingerprints and retinal scans. That door didn't even have a handle. She stopped. "What room is that?" she asked. Madame Zeno didn't turn. Her voice dropped low. "You do not clean that room. You do not touch it. You do not ask again." But not even the Oga goes there, she snapped. Not since the year everything changed. The warning stuck in Eniola's ears. Her room was on the opposite wing, far from the forbidden door, but she felt its presence everywhere. That night, she could barely sleep. The rain had stopped, but thunder rolled lazily in the distance. She lay in her pristine bed, staring at the ceiling with its LED constellations. The room had no windows, only a screen that could simulate sunrise. It all felt too artificial, too controlled. Then the sound came, a soft, haunting lullaby, floating on the air like wind chimes underwater. Eniola sat up sharply. It was coming from the direction of the forbidden door. She opened her room door gently, peeking into the hallway. It was dark. The motion sensors delayed for once. The music continued, not loud, not alarming, just familiar. She tiptoed halfway toward the corridor, holding her breath, then silence. The music stopped as suddenly as it had begun. She waited. Nothing moved, no light, no shadow, no breath. In the morning, she asked the other housekeepers. "I heard music last night," she whispered. They froze. "There are no speakers in that wing," one of them said. "There's no electricity wired there at all." Madame Zeno glared at her for even asking. "Do your work. Keep your curiosity to yourself." Obina Odogwu remained a ghost. Eniola only caught glimpses, a shadow disappearing into the elevator, a silhouette behind a curtain, or a faint cough from the garden balcony above. He never spoke to her, but she knew he saw her. She felt his presence whenever she passed the east corridor. One afternoon, while changing her sheets, Eniola found something strange tucked between the folds of the fresh linen. A hand-drawn portrait. The paper was old and creased, drawn with delicate charcoal strokes. It showed a woman, beautiful, with soft eyes but tears rolling down her cheeks. Behind her, unmistakably, was the wooden door. She turned the paper over. There was no signature, just one line, written faintly in pencil. "If someone finds this, I hope they see what I couldn't say." Eniola's hands trembled. That night, she did not sleep. The sun rose late over the Odogwu Mansion, filtered through artificial windows that simulated warmth, but not soul. Eniola hadn't slept much. The portrait she found haunted her. It lay hidden in her Bible now, not out of faith, but fear. She couldn't shake the woman's eyes or the silence of that forbidden door behind her. By morning, she made up her mind. The mansion was massive, but the east wing remained untouched. No laundry collected from there, no vacuuming, no scheduled cleaning. It was always dark, always cold, and always skipped during her daily rounds. But now, with Madame Zeno distracted by visitors from the head office, Eniola changed her path. The corridor to the east wing was longer than she remembered. The lights flickered strangely, even though they were supposed to be motion-censored. A breeze brushed her arm, but none of the smart windows were open. When she stepped inside the first room near the wooden door, something shifted. The air was heavier, denser, not stale, more like waiting. She cleaned quickly, methodically, trying not to let her mind run wild. But just as she was about to leave, she noticed a rocking chair. Old, faded, but untouched. It moved, slowly, back and forth. There was no draft, no wind, nothing. She froze. Then it stopped. She wanted to believe it was her imagination. Maybe the chair had been tilted slightly, and gravity took its time. But then, the lights above flickered violently and went out. Only in that room. When she stepped back into the hallway, the rest of the mansion remained perfectly lit. Her hands shook as she walked away. Later that day, she asked one of the younger stewards, "Why is there a chair there? No one lives in that wing, right?" The boy looked terrified. He mumbled something and ran off. She confronted Madame Zeno in the kitchen. Her voice trembled with restraint. "I cleaned the east wing today." The stewardess didn't turn to look at her. She kept slicing plantains with the calm precision of a surgeon. "I told you never to go there. There was a rocking chair. And—" Madame Zeno stopped slicing. "Some doors," she said softly, "hold more than secrets. You may clean the rest of the house, but if you value peace, stay out of that wing." That night, Obina passed through the hallway while she was wiping down the staircase railing. He didn't notice her at first, but then paused near the east wing corridor. He stood still, silent. He stared at the wooden door, face blank, shoulders heavy, for a long moment. Then he turned away and entered the elevator, disappearing into his sky-glass office above. Why build a futuristic mansion, Eniola thought, and leave one room untouched? Why no smart locks, no surveillance in that wing, no upgrades? Obina's mansion was a palace of perfection, but the east wing was his wound, and he refused to let it heal. The next morning, she snuck into the wing again. This time, she brought gloves and cleaning supplies, not because she planned to clean, but to look inconspicuous. Every inch of the corridor whispered secrets. Dust only gathered near the door, as if the air around it repelled life. She crouched by a loose tile, something she noticed the day before, but hadn't dared to touch. Gently lifting it, she found a crumpled note. The paper was stiff with age, but protected by plastic wrapping. It wasn't a note. It was a drawing. Symbols, letters, a pattern. It looked like a wiring map. She followed it down the hall and found a panel covered in grime and hidden behind a shelf. A fuse box, not connected to the smart grid. Why would there be a separate power system for one room? She fiddled with the switches, not intending to turn anything on, just to understand. One switch clicked. Nothing happened. Immediately. Then, a soft click echoed from the direction of the wooden door. And light, faint but real, a glow from beneath the door, pale yellow, flickering. She gasped, "What are you doing here?" She turned around. Obina stood behind her, face hard, eyes blazing. He had never spoken directly to her before. I I saw light. I thought, you thought. His voice cracked. You were warned. You're fired. Pack your things. Eniola opened her mouth, then hesitated. But something in her, something beyond fear, made her speak. I didn't mean to break anything. But that light, it came from the room. The locked room. Someone, something, is in there. Obina froze. Not a flinch, not a blink. His breath shallowed. He didn't yell. He didn't repeat the order. He just stared at the door. Without another word, he walked away. That night, Eniola lay awake in the room she had yet to pack. Her belongings were still neatly folded, untouched. She didn't hear the music this time. But somewhere deep in the east corridor, the sound of footsteps echoed against wood. And a lock turned. Eniola crept out quietly. From the edge of the hallway, she saw him, Obina, standing before the wooden door, holding a key in his trembling hand. He hadn't entered that room in over a decade. Now he opened it and collapsed to his knees. Morning dripped slowly through the house, like a reluctant truth. Eniola waited outside Obina's study, the hand-drawn portrait clutched to her chest. She'd considered hiding it again, pretending it didn't exist. But the look on his face the night before, when he fell before the door, haunted her more than the drawing itself. When he finally opened the door, he didn't speak. He just looked at her, not with anger, but with the fatigue of a man who had lived too long with ghosts. "I found this," she said softly, "tucked into my bedsheet." She handed him the paper. The moment his eyes landed on it, his knees almost gave again. "No," he whispered, backing into the room as if the drawing might burn him. "She's not supposed to be here." His hand trembled as he traced the woman's face, the tears, the familiar sadness in her eyes. She drew this the week before she vanished. He looked up at Eniola, as though realizing she was more than just a maid. "I buried this photo in Calabar, in the sea." He folded the paper with reverence, his voice cracking. "Where did you really find it?" "I swear," Eniola said. "It was under my pillow. I didn't put it there." He didn't argue. Her name was Kaima, a pianist, a children's book illustrator, the only daughter of a market woman from Wari, who once told Kaima, "Use your art to make children dream, not fear." Obina told the story slowly, haltingly, as if remembering it stripped away his armor. They met at a private fundraiser in Abuja. She was sketching the waiters in her notebook. Instead of mingling, he was instantly captivated. Her laughter had no filter, her clothes were handmade, and her accent defied Lagos pretension. They loved in secret. His parents disapproved. The board members of his company whispered behind his back. But for a time, they were unstoppable. "She played piano for me at midnight," he said, "and she painted the sky differently every week, called it her weather diary." Their wedding was set for December. She vanished in November. No ransom, no signs of struggle, no police leads, just silence. Obina searched, offered rewards, contacted private investigators, but nothing ever surfaced. People said she ran away, that I pushed her away, that I... He trailed off. Eventually, they stopped asking. So he stopped answering. In the years that followed, he built walls, both around the house and his heart. Technology that solved water crises, but couldn't answer a single question that kept him awake every night. "Every room in this house has her touch," he murmured, "except that one behind the door. That one holds what I couldn't face." Eniola, shaken by his pain, felt a pull stronger than fear. "Maybe she left more behind," she said. "Maybe there are pieces still here, waiting." He looked at her, truly looked at her. Not as a maid, not even as a stranger, as someone willing to step where others ran. She asked for permission to search. not wildly, not recklessly, but with care, to catalog everything Kaima touched, to understand. Obina nodded once, then shut the study door. What began as a cleaning task became a ritual. Each corner of the mansion offered a new fragment, a sketch tucked behind a frame, a phrase carved into wood, initials on the base of a sculpture. Kaima's spirit wasn't haunting the house. It was the house. One afternoon, while dusting the west hallway, the part no one used anymore, Eniola found it. A piano, covered in a thick beige cloth, surrounded by unopened boxes and forgotten memories. She pulled the cloth off carefully, revealing an upright instrument in pristine condition. Ivory keys, polished surface, still tuned somehow. She sat, pressed a key. It echoed slightly, sad, hollow. Then she noticed something strange. One of the keys didn't play. She pressed it again. No sound. Gently, she pried it upward. Beneath it, something rattled. A soft click. A faint weight shifting. Something had been hidden inside the piano. Something waiting to be found. The key lifted with gentle resistance, and beneath it lay a small metallic object, no larger than a coin, but etched with circuitry. A music chip. Eniola held it up to the light. There was a switch. She hesitated only for a second before flicking it on. A soft, delicate lullaby bloomed into the air. The same lullaby she had heard on her first night in the mansion. Notes like falling petals, tender and haunting, echoing with the voice of someone long gone. Eniola sat frozen, the sound wrapping around her like a blanket of memory. Obina entered silently behind her, drawn by the music. His eyes widened. "That song," he whispered. "Where did you get it?" Eniola turned, showing him the chip. It was hidden in the piano. Obina stared at it like a ghost. She called it "The Rain Sleeps," said she'd write it for our child. When the time came. Eniola's breath caught. "I thought you said she was never pregnant?" "That's what I believed." He sank into the nearest chair, the lullaby still drifting through the air. "She never told me she was." Silence grew between them, but not the kind that kept things hidden. This silence was opening. Eniola held the chip like a clue in a riddle. "What if this house is a message?" she said. "Not with letters, but with images, with sound, with the things no one thought to read." Obina looked at her, a flicker of something returning to his eyes. Something like hope. They began that same day. Room by room, they examined the mansion, not as a home, but as a gallery. Kaima's paintings had once been admired as eccentric art. Now they were evidence. In the study, a canvas of an ocean with a red thread floating in the waves. In the hallway, a child with no face holding a lantern in a storm. In the dining room, a birdcage wide open, a white bird flying toward the moon, a single teardrop falling behind. Obina traced that one with trembling fingers. "She told me once," he said, "that freedom wasn't leaving. It was letting go." Then they found the painting. It hung behind a shelf in the guest lounge, almost forgotten. A locked wooden door, the same one in the east wing. But in the painting's shadows, there were two figures. One obvious, Kaima, her posture unmistakable. The other was hidden, only a silhouette, smaller, almost erased. "A child," Eniola murmured. "She painted a child in the shadow." Obina said nothing. They searched deeper. Kaima's old studio was still intact in the basement, a glass-walled room filled with unused canvases and dusty supplies. Eniola found a series of children's books Kaima had self-published, never released to the public, hand-bound, illustrated by her, written under the pseudonym M.K. Light. Eniola read the first story aloud to Obina that night. It was about a girl who lived in a mansion that made no sound. All doors opened, except one, and behind it, her mother painted the sky while humming lullabies, until the day the girl was told to run and never return. Obina listened with his head bowed, hands clasped tight. "She was trying to tell someone something," Eniola said. "Maybe not you. Maybe someone else." "A daughter," he whispered. "But how? Why keep it secret?" "Because maybe someone was watching." Obina's eyes met hers, and for the first time, fear lived in them. If Kaima was afraid, he said slowly, then someone close to us, someone inside, made her feel unsafe. Later that night, Eniola returned to the studio alone, unable to stop turning the pages. And there it was, a final illustration, a child, curled under a grand staircase, watching as a woman with a scarf around her head slipped away through a hidden door. Eniola dropped the book. That staircase, she'd passed it every day on the way to the kitchen. The house was still, bathed in the cold glow of evening. Outside, the Lagos skyline glittered in the distance, untouched by the secrets unraveling inside the mansion. Eniola stood before the grand staircase near the back hallway, the one the other maids called the servant's spine. It curled upward, like a fossil, elegant and forgotten, the same staircase she'd passed every day without a second thought. Now, it pulsed with memory. She crouched at the base, brushing her hand against the underside of the lowest step. Her fingers met resistance, fabric, soft and aged. She pulled gently. A bundle emerged, wrapped in old silk embroidered with Kaima's initials. Inside, a tiny red toy piano, the kind a child would play. It looked handmade, the keys painted with tiny fingerprints. The top had been hollowed out and sealed again. Carefully, Eniola pried it open. A memory card. She stared at it for a long moment, afraid to hope, afraid to break whatever spell it carried. She rushed to her room, locked the door, and inserted the card into her tablet. The screen flickered, and then Kaima appeared. Not in a portrait, not in a memory, but alive. She sat in a dim room, wearing a scarf, and looking into the camera with tired eyes and fierce love. "If you find this," she whispered, voice soft as dusk, "you were never the mistake. You were the reason I survived." Eniola's hand flew to her mouth. Kaima looked around nervously, then leaned closer. "If this message has reached you, it means I couldn't stay, but I gave everything so you could have a life, even if it's without me." The video cut off suddenly. Just 1 minute, no date, no location, but the message was unmistakable. It was for a child, and that child had never been acknowledged, never spoken of, not even by Obina. Eniola ran to him, unable to hold it in. When she played the footage for him, he didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. That was for a daughter. He sat down slowly, as if gravity had changed. "She never told me. She never said anything." "Maybe she was scared," Eniola said gently. "Maybe she wasn't sure you'd protect them both." Obina's voice dropped to a whisper. "What kind of man builds smart cities, but doesn't know his own blood is out there?" He stood, suddenly urgent. Kaima had a foundation for young girls, art scholarships, school fees, clinics. Check the accounts. Anything still active. Within the hour, his assistant tracked down a quiet account still issuing monthly payments. The recipient? A boarding school in Ilorin, funded under a trust named Lightchild. Obina read the file twice. A girl. Born in the same year, Kaima disappeared. No parents listed. Enrolled under the name Naya Kaima. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He wanted to call, to scream, to cry. But Eniola, steady as always, leaned forward. "Let me write. We don't know what she's been told. If Kaima trusted someone to hide her, they may have kept her identity from her." He agreed, barely. They sent a gentle message through the school's admin portal. Just a note requesting contact from the guardian of Naya Kaima for a foundation interview. 2 days passed. Then, a reply. A short voice memo. Obina played it on speaker. A girl's voice. Young, clear, calm. "Who are you?" And just like that, silence broke again. The voice played again on Obina's phone, on loop. "Who are you?" 3 words, spoken with the quiet clarity of someone who had been raised in questions. Obina stood motionless in his office, the skyline of Lagos behind him, golden light pouring through his floor-to-ceiling windows. His heart raced, but his mind spun faster. Could she really be his? Eniola, standing beside him, placed a hand gently on the desk. "Let me go," she said softly. "Let me see her first." Obina turned, unsure. "Why?" "Because she won't know your name, but she might recognize mine, the way Kaima once did. She left me clues, Mr. Odogwu. Maybe she meant for me to reach her." He nodded slowly. And so, the next morning, Eniola boarded a quiet bus to Ilorin, clutching a folder and a single photo, the one of Kaima crying before the wooden door. The journey was long, the roads winding through silence and towns too small to be on any map. At last, the bus stopped before a modest compound, Marian Starlight Academy, a girls-only boarding school nestled in the trees, surrounded by gardens and painted murals. Eniola was greeted by the headmistress, a woman with graying hair and kind eyes. "Ah, Naya," she said with a soft smile. "A quiet child, but gifted. Too observant for her age." She led Eniola through a narrow hallway lined with children's artwork. One painting stopped her in her tracks. A house. No caption, but unmistakable. Glass walls, a garden, a tall staircase at the center. It was the mansion. "Who drew this?" Eniola asked. The headmistress smiled. "Naya." She said it came to her in a dream. Eniola's heart hammered in her chest. They reached a classroom where a few girls were sketching in silence. At the back, by the window, sat a girl with deep brown eyes and hair pulled into two soft puffs. She looked up. Their eyes met. Eniola smiled, slowly walking over. "You must be Naya." The girl said nothing, but studied her with quiet curiosity. "I knew your mother," Eniola added. "A long time ago." Naya's pencil paused. "Everyone says that. Then they ask where she went." Eniola pulled out the music chip and placed it on the table. She played the lullaby. Naya's eyes widened. "I hear this in my sleep sometimes. Do you know what it's called?" Naya shook her head. "The Rain Sleeps. Your mother wrote it." There was silence, except for the melody playing softly in the room. Then Naya spoke. "Do you know the angel?" Eniola blinked. "What angel?" "The one who visits me, once a year. She brings art books, wears scarves. She has a scar here." Naya touched her left cheek. The headmistress stepped forward, lowering her voice. "She's not a relative. Claims to be from a foundation. No name, always polite. Refuses to speak about the past." Eniola's pulse quickened. She spent the day with Naya, walking the gardens, drawing together, letting the bond grow organically. The girl's laughter was rare, but when it came, it was music. Later that evening, Naya handed her a sketch. "Drew this today," she said shyly. Eniola unfolded it. A woman with a long gray scarf, and a scar down her cheek. She knew that face. Madame Zeno, the head stewardess of the mansion. The hallway stretched long and quiet as Obina waited by the kitchen doors. His reflection in the glass looked older than he remembered, wearier, hollowed by the years he spent refusing to ask the questions he should have. The drawing Eniola brought back from Ilorin trembled in his hand. The scarf, the scar, the eyes. Madame Zeno. Her name wasn't Zeno, not really. Her file said Ngozi Okafor, but he hadn't said that name in years. He didn't call for her. He waited. And when she walked past with a tray of tea, he stepped into her path and held up the drawing. She stopped. The color drained from her face. "You've been seeing her," he said. Not a question. Ngozi looked away. "I was trying to protect what she left behind." His voice was sharp. "You helped Kaima disappear?" Ngozi exhaled slowly, then walked into the sitting room and set the tray down. "She came to me the night she vanished, shaking, whispering like someone being followed. She thought her phone was tapped. She thought one of your business associates was watching her movements." Obina sat down. "Why didn't she tell me?" "She didn't trust the walls anymore, Obina, and she was pregnant. She didn't want to risk that child." The words knocked the breath out of him. Again. "Confirmation," Ngozi continued. "She asked me to take her to a safe place. Not forever. Just long enough. But she went into labor earlier than expected. Complications." He closed his eyes. "She died, didn't she?" She held her daughter for 30 seconds before the end. She named her Naya Kaima. Then she was gone. Silence fell like snow. "And all this time," he said, "you—" "I used my own funds at first, then siphoned from the foundation, carefully. I visit once a year. I never told her who you were. I told her her mother loved her enough to vanish." Obinna's voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ngozi's eyes softened. "Because for years, you weren't ready. You were obsessed with closure. You wanted to fix the past. But this child, she's not a second chance, Obinna. She's her own beginning." He buried his face in his hands. "I need to meet her." Ngozi studied him for a long time. "She's more like Kaima than you'll ever be ready for." Still, she gave him a nod. The arrangements were made quietly. Eniola returned to Ilorin 2 days later and told Naya about a special invitation, an art exhibition visit in Lagos. A simple field trip. Just a day, no pressure. Naya agreed. The mansion felt different when she stepped into it. Even the air shifted. Obinna waited upstairs, heart pounding, staring at the footage of Kaima again as if to remind himself she once existed. Eniola walked Naya through the hallways slowly. The girl touched the walls like they remembered her. She paused by the piano, fingers gliding over the keys. "Feels like she's still here," Naya whispered. Then they turned toward the east corridor. The locked door stood there, unchanged. But Naya walked up to it, her steps calm. She placed her small palm against the wood and said, "Mommy said never to open this, unless he was ready." Eniola's breath caught. And somewhere down the hall, Obinna's knees buckled under the weight of 10 years of silence. The key felt heavier than it used to. Obinna stood before the old wooden door, the mansion utterly silent behind him. Naya and Eniola watched from a distance, both holding their breath. His hand trembled as he inserted the key into the lock, the metal stiff with age and memory. Click. The door creaked open slowly, like a sigh being released after a decade of holding breath. The room was dim, the curtains drawn, yet everything inside looked preserved, like Kaima had just stepped out a moment ago and would return any second. A scent hit him. Her perfume, soft hibiscus, notes of orange blossom, the exact combination she wore on their last morning together. Her clothes still hung neatly in the wardrobe, a silk scarf still draped over the vanity chair. A teacup sat beside an unfinished book. Nothing had been touched. Nothing had dared. Naya stepped in carefully, as if the room might break under her feet. She drifted toward a wooden drawer by the bed, one with a painted butterfly carved into the front. She opened it. Inside was a small, leather-bound diary. Burgundy, worn at the edges. No lock. She handed it to Obinna. His fingers trembled as he opened the first page. "To the child of my breath, and the man I loved too much to say goodbye." He sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed Kaima once dreamed of sharing with him. His voice cracked as he read aloud, "If you are reading this, then it means silence did not win. I loved Obinna, but love does not protect you from fear. Fear crept in like fog. It whispered lies I began to believe, until I couldn't tell which thoughts were mine and which were planted." Each page unveiled a layer of her. The secret appointments she canceled, the strange calls that rang once and hung up, the shadow she felt followed her from the moment she got pregnant. "I did not run because I doubted him. I ran because I feared he would not believe me, and I feared the world would eat our child alive before she could learn her name." Obinna's tears fell freely now, not out of pain, but out of release. The weight he had carried for so long, that maybe he had pushed her away, maybe he hadn't protected her enough. Now it lifted, page by page. On the final written page, there were only 2 things: a pressed flower and a handwritten quote. "Freedom is not escape. It is knowing when to let go." He closed the book, sobbing not with despair, but something closer to peace. An emotion he hadn't felt in a decade. Naya sat beside him quietly, her hand on his arm, grounding him in the present. Then Eniola, who had been standing quietly near the window, gently flipped back through the diary. Her fingers stopped at a half-page. There, written in smaller script, like a note scribbled on instinct, was her name. If Eniola finds this, tell her she was the thread, the girl who was meant to find the truth. Her breath caught. The room, the door, the silence, all of it had led to this moment. And in that moment, Eniola understood. She hadn't just been a maid. She had been chosen. The room had grown quiet again, but it was no longer heavy. It was sacred now. Eniola remained long after Obina and Naya had stepped out, as though the walls themselves still held something unspoken. She moved slowly, letting her fingers trace the edges of the vanity, the seams of the bed frame, and finally, the tall wardrobe standing at the far end of the room. The light from the window caught something strange, a thin, uneven line along the back panel, a seam. She opened the wardrobe's back carefully, expecting bare wall, but instead she found something extraordinary, a mosaic, hidden behind the furniture, layered tile by tile, was Kaima's final story, not with words, but color, form, and memory. Eniola stepped back, breath catching in her throat. It was a mural, a fragmented abstract tale told in stone, mirror, and glass. On the left, a woman, pregnant, running through a forest of faceless figures. In the center, her hand held by a man with blurred features, Obina, surrounded by a golden aura. Below them, a cradle, empty. But above it all, at the heart of the mural, stood a girl, grown, radiant, unlocking a door that glowed with warm light. Naya. It was unmistakably her. Kaima had foreseen it, painted it, left it hidden for only those meant to find it. Obina arrived moments later, drawn by the silence. When he saw the wall, he didn't speak. He simply stepped closer, placed his hand over the tile, where Naya's face shimmered in gold. She knew, he whispered. She knew she wouldn't be here. But she still believed we'd make it to this moment. He turned to Eniola. I've spent 10 years mourning a future I thought I lost, but Kaima gave me another one. He looked toward the open door, where Naya's laughter now drifted down the hallway like sunlight. I want to give her my name, but not as a claim, as a gift, if she wants it. Eniola nodded, and Obina looked at her with a different kind of respect now. Kaima always said the world didn't need more billionaires. It needed more guardians of beauty. The foundation she started, the Kaima Arts Initiative. I want you to lead it. Eniola's eyes widened. You've seen the story, he added. You are part of the story. She didn't answer immediately. For the first time in weeks, her heart hesitated. This mansion had changed her, awakened her, reshaped her. But did that mean she belonged within its walls? Or was her journey meant to bloom somewhere else, in quieter places, where lost voices still needed unlocking? Later that evening, Naya approached her with a small wrapped box. For you, the girl said shyly. Mommy said to give this if you ever found the wall. Eniola opened the gift slowly. Inside, nestled in black velvet, was a single key. Old, brass, ornate, but it was not for any door in the mansion. There was a tiny tag attached to the loop. It read, For the house you will build, not the one you found. The key felt different in her hand, not heavy with history, like the wooden doors had been, but warm, simple, and full of invitation. Eniola stood before a small, forgotten bungalow nestled at the far end of the Odogwu estate grounds. Ivy wrapped itself around its clay-colored walls. Its windows were dusty, but still intact, and wildflowers had begun reclaiming the path leading to the front porch. This was Kaima's retreat, Obina said softly, standing beside her. She came here when the world felt too loud. She painted, played piano, dreamed. He looked at her, his eyes gentler now. It's yours now. Do with it what your heart asks. Eniola stepped inside. The air was musty with age, but alive with possibility. Faded canvases leaned against the walls, brushes stiff in glass jars, and notebooks scattered on a sun-drenched table. The house hadn't been abandoned. It had been waiting. Weeks passed, and the bungalow transformed. Not into a shrine, but a beacon. Eniola opened it up to village girls from the outskirts of Lagos, girls with dusty shoes, bright eyes, and dreams they didn't yet know how to voice. She called it the Light Room. There were no grades here, no uniforms, just paint, music, clay, language, and space to become. The first time Naya visited, she wept while sketching under the mango tree behind the house. "This feels like her," she whispered. Obina visited often, not as the elusive billionaire, but as a quiet father learning to listen. He sat through art shows, helped hang canvases, even planted sunflowers in the back garden. The mansion shifted too. It was no longer a fortress of silence. It breathed again, filled with footsteps, music, laughter. The once forbidden door no longer stayed locked. Obina converted the room into a memorial gallery for Kaima's life. Her art, journals, and music echoed there, not as echoes of sorrow, but as a testament to love that defied fear. People came from across the country to walk through it, to see the mural, to hear the lullaby, to remember. And Eniola, the girl who once arrived barefoot in the storm, now walked barefoot by choice in the sunlight, with paint on her fingers and purpose in her voice. She was no longer the maid. She was the guardian of a legacy, the keeper of a truth too long buried. She stood one afternoon at the entrance of her bungalow, watching a group of girls paint mosaics on the outer wall. Naya sat cross-legged nearby, working on a large canvas, a woman with a lantern leading children through the dark. Obina joined her quietly, hands in his pockets. "She would have been proud," he said. "She is proud," Eniola replied. The wind rustled the trees. She turned toward the mansion, glass walls now reflecting life instead of loneliness, and then looked back at her own small house with its wide open doors and growing garden. She smiled. She hadn't opened the door to disobey. She'd opened it to set them all free. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful Nigerian dramas like this. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were Eniola? Every share helps keep these stories alive. Turn on notifications so you never miss when the next secret door opens.